Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where socially awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all-around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello and good evening, folks. Happy Easter. Praise to the goddess of spring, etc.
And hopefully our second co-host, the primary source of evil and comics, Corrupt, will be joining us sometime soon. I'm not really sure when that will be, but again.
Yeah,
And
soon or ever.
yeah, and I am your host / Time Lord Wannabe, the brainstormer of pop culture. How's everyone doing? And happy Easter, even though I completely forgot it was Easter. Yeah, so so this is going to be kind of an interesting week for us because we have two articles we didn't cover last week, which seems to be happening a lot lately, and we have two articles from this week. So, you know,
and possibly another one from this week if
we have time.
If we have time.
Yeah.
Because Ezra Miller decided to choke a bitch.
We'll get there, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, right. Let me. I should have opened the damn thing while I was playing the intro. So, first
folks, zing.
Yeah, I am a little tired. Granted, I woke up at 8 today.
Yeah, me too, actually. Although I went to bed at like 1. I don't know when you went to bed.
I don't know, 12 or something. Usually I try to go to bed around 10 so I can wake up like around 6 and then I'm up all day. Well, usually. So I kind of slept in today.
Well, it's not like you had anywhere to go, considering the world is still stopped.
Legitimately, I just want to go out and go on a walk, and I feel like I wouldn't have much trouble doing that.
You probably wouldn't. I've heard people actually using this time to go on more walks than normal.
Yeah, I just think I need to get a mask or something, and not like one to rob people. So, like one of those sickness masks.
You just need a Casey Jones mask.
Who knows? Maybe I could do some vigilante while I'm out, because who knows? There could be some looters or something.
This would definitely be the appropriate time to start a vigilante career if you were going to.
Yeah. All I need is some brass knuckles, a spiked baseball bat, and a taser. No, cattle prod. Also, hockey mask. Maybe a skull mask. Well, a hockey mask with a skull on
it. When is your birthday? Just out of curiosity, because I need to remember that the next time your birthday comes up.
November 16th.
Okay, so
didn't we celebrate it? I think we celebrated it, didn't we?
I'm pretty sure we did. I just forgot exactly when it was. But yeah, next November I will have to remember that and put some money away to hopefully get my friend something.
I mean, I got a baseball bat, so I mean, granted, I can't really swing it. I think I need an aluminum one.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Plus, you like your you like your wooden one a little bit too much, so you don't want to damage it or get it all bloody with some poor fool's viscera.
Chrononauts says, "Are you gonna become a supervillain? So, what office are you running for?" Um, Never been a supervillain. That's Dalton's territory. I'm more of a man of justice. Um, and I find most offices or forms of power in that kind of style to be utterly useless.
I feel like the most appropriate thing I could say is Elijah's uh Elijah's the exact opposite of the hero speech from the end of Unbreakable.
Hmm. Oh my god, are you Light Yagami and I'm L? No, wait, I actually care about people.
No, like I said, I think the Elijah David analogy works better.
So, well, yeah, you have brittle bones, and it takes a lot more to knock me down. So,
Yeah. Although if if Elijah's hero villain theory holds true, I don't think I don't think you're quite my opposite number. I think I know of someone that I went to or that I went to school with that was far more my opposite number. He was also a guy I had a crush on for most of high school, but that's neither here nor there.
right, okay. So, yeah, article is up and running now. This is from Bounding into Comics. Um, this is by J.B. Augustine, published April 9th, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Director Matt Reeves says the Batman will have a humanist bent like his other films. Um, I had seen, well, I'd seen a few videos in my my subscription list
Mm-hmm.
that talked about Matt Reeves in this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had, uh, and I told you like before when we were talking about this article, that I that some people were saying like it's going woke for some reason. Granted,
Yeah, I mean, I have my problems with humanism as a philosophy. I wouldn't consider myself a humanist, by any stretch of the imagination. But to say that humanism is woke, I wouldn't go that far. Now, if he made a reference to what's called humanism plus, which is basically a bunch of feminists trying to co-opt the humanist movement, then I would be worried. But as far as humanism itself goes, my problems with humanism basically remain consistent and have nothing to do with my problems with feminism necessarily.
um, so I'm not well versed in humanism myself. So Don, if you can give us like a kind of a brief rundown, like an overview of it all, just those who don't know.
Okay, so short and simple version is around the end of the Renaissance, um there was sort of a philosophical movement that spawned both the scientific revolution and the um Great British Enlightenment, that basically postulated um, that the ultimate decider of value was humanity and sort of human human subjective impulses and human designs. Essentially, in the Middle Ages, every value judgment was deferred to God, i.e., this is good or this is bad or this is worthwhile because God says so. And after the introduction of classical Greco-Roman and Greco-Egyptian values in the Renaissance, there was a philosophical movement that went, hang on, why the fuck should we listen to what God thinks? We should be able to reason this out for ourselves. The problem is it left the door open to things like we see now with feminism, where everything boils down to because I said so and my subjectivity and so on. And that's why I'm not a humanist, because I think value exists independently of both God and humans. I think value is a solid, tangible concept that is immutable to every being. Value is discovered, not created or decided. As far as I'm concerned. But
Yeah. Okay. So just before we get started with the actual article, Chronon has some things he has to say. What is better? Wood is better. So what am I? The beast? You spelled that wrong there, or some type of autocorrect there, Chronon. Chronon said, and then so what are your layman's version of humanism, rationalism?
okay, no, those two things are not the same thing at all. See, humanism is tied in with like I said, the scientific revolution and the British Enlightenment, which were both heavily based in empiricism, which is the philosophical sort of opposite of rationalism. Rationalism essentially is the idea that logic exists independently of anything to relate to, i.e., in rationalism, logic is the software around which the entire universe runs. In the notion of empiricism, there is no software. In the notion of empiricism, the only way you can demonstrate that something is true is if it relates to external reality directly. And that's also why I wouldn't consider myself, at least not primarily, an empiricist. I sort of blend the two, where I think that logic existing independently of empirical reality is what gives empirical reality anything resembling coherency. So I sort of I sort of try to have it both ways, because a world where it's just evidence and there is no logic is basically incoherence. And a world where there's just logic and no external impact on anything is a world where you can postulate things like the patriarchy and other non-falsifiable bullshit that doesn't make any logical coherent sense within itself. Yeah, but short version, rationalism is the opposite of empiricism and therefore is kind of also the opposite of humanism, because humanism is fundamentally materialist, i.e., sort of physical reality is all there is, therefore we should measure our ideas based on physical reality and keep abstraction to a minimum. Anyway, back to the article.
I feel like me opening a can of soda is like what flicking a Zippo lighter is for weaponized nerd rage.
Yeah, kind of. It also is kind of a signifier of when I've gone on too long, when a brainstormer needs to physically get a drink. I could be like, okay, it's time for me to roll this in before it gets too out of control.
Yeah, no, I was sitting here for like a good minute or so, just waiting to do that when you finished.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured. Anyway, back to the article.
Anyway, Matt Reeves spoke on his vision for the Cape Crusader and Gotham City, now that he has free time to do so, and discussed how he pitched the movie. Okay? For the record, I did check out the Nerdist thing. A lot of words. A lot of words.
Mm.
All right, talking with the Nerdist, Reeves explained he pitched the Batman the way he does all his movies, including most notably Let Me In and his Planet of the Apes series. He tries to find a humanist angle.
Which I have an issue with on a slightly philosophical level because I don't think you should be searching for angles on stories. I think it's at least partially your job as the writer to play the ball where it lies, more or less. But
Well, he could be talking about themes.
well, no, I'm sure he is talking about themes, but in my opinion, you shouldn't have to bring external themes into a story. The themes should sort of organically present themselves where possible. But
Mm-hmm.
if this is his approach to every movie he does, then you know, it's just a reflection on him as a person, and I can't really fault him for that. I personally find humanism to be kind of stupid because it basically opens the door to rampant subjectivism, but
Mm-hmm.
I understand I understand I think where he's coming from. So and despite the, the outrage brigade getting all triggered by this, humanist doesn't necessarily mean woke. Humanism
Well,
is stupid, but it's stupid for really obscure philosophical reasons that most people don't give a shit about.
it's again, it just depends on what he said, right? Anyway, I feel like I was going to say something. Right. Again, like with the way I had gotten to know Matt Reeves with his Planet of the Apes series, which again is it's absolutely phenomenal. And if you haven't watched that, just get the fuck out of here right now.
It is a really good series. It's one of the best reboots or prequels of recent memory as well.
Oh yeah,
Which
no, dude, seriously, that is.
yeah, reboots and prequels are hard to do, but he managed to make an entire new trilogy. I honestly wish he had gone all the way to the original like five or six that the original franchise had
Right. You know how I know it's good? Like that series is good.
because it made you cry.
Specifically, the last one, War for the Planet of the Apes. Even though technically that title was kind of misleading.
Yeah, it was more like battle for the Planet of the Apes more than war. It was
I
just
mean,
sort of a
granted, it does take place within the war that had happened um,
apes and
between
humans.
between apes and humans, but I mean like between the movies.
Hmm.
Granted, it's more of the spirit end of the war.
Hmm.
Still a good movie. Oh god damn, did I was near crying like a lot of different times.
Which, as we've gone over on many a stream, is your personal metric for good movie.
Yeah, because Brainstormer of pop culture ain't no bitch, and he doesn't cry often.
Yes, this we also know and have established on many a live stream.
Great. Okay, so where was I? I'm going to pitch the version of Batman that I would do, which is going to have a humanist bent, said Reeves, and who knows if they'll have any interest. It's unclear what Reeves means here about the film having a humanist bent. The word humanist has multiple definitions. Sorry, throat a little dry.
It
Um,
it does and it doesn't. Let them explain, and I will troubleshoot the philosophical bullshit.
According to the American Humanist Association, humanism is a progressive philosophy of life that, without theism or other supernatural beliefs, affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good. Their tagline is "Good without a God."
I mean, kind of. There is a sort of ethical aspect to humanism, which is sort of since we're all humans, that means we're all equal by default. But you don't necessarily need humanism to get all people are equal by default. You can be, and I am, an egalitarian without being a humanist. Um, the problem I have with humanism is it's essentially a existential value judgment. It's replacing God said so with the human mind or human um, standard says so, which again leads to the problem of rampant subjectivism, which I hate. Um, as far as the American Humanist Association is concerned, I have my concerns that they're slightly co-opted by the sort of feminist progressive movements, um, especially because the last I looked at their tagline, the word progressive wasn't included, which is suspect to me. But I don't really have huge problems with this definition. Um, the thing is, I think the writer is going to now bring up the history of humanism that I kind of lightly went over a little bit ago. And the thing is, they're not separate. They're not separate definitions. They're just different aspects of one larger definition.
Right.
There's stuff missing from the American Humanist Association definition that I think are going to get brought up, but they're not separate. They're just different.
There's the dog.
Yeah, fuck off, dog.
I feel like people should drink for that because I know it doesn't happen often, but it does happen sometimes.
Yeah, because my brother needs to pay attention to his goddamn dog, so his goddamn dog is not annoying me while I'm on live stream.
All right. However, there's also Renaissance humanism, which is the study of classical antiquity and was a program to revive the cultural legacy of classical antiquity. It was predominantly centered in Italy and cities such as Florence, Naples, and Rome.
Okay, this part's a bit. Now how much do I want to historically spurred?
There's what I
Go
there's
ahead.
something else that I just yeah. All right. This humanism included members such as Pope Pius II, Sixtus IV, and Leo X, and had a focus on understanding and translating early Christian texts.
Oh, okay. Here's the rub. Humanism proper didn't really arise until the rough end of the Renaissance, and what the author is describing here is just classicism. Classicism kind of led into humanism, but they're not the same. Again, humanism is primarily defined by the existential value judgment, replacing God as the existential authority figure, i.e., this is good, bad, or valuable because God said so, with this is good, bad, or valuable because human subjectivity says so. Um, you can make the argument that Renaissance classicism led to humanism, but and I have seen many of those arguments, and I have made many of those arguments. However, they are distinctly separate movements. It's one of the reasons why we separate the Renaissance from the Enlightenment or the Scientific Revolution, because they are related, but they are distinctly separate entities, historically speaking. It was basically the context of Renaissance classicism that led to the philosophical beginnings of humanism. And to say that any pope was a humanist pope is kind of funny because it's literally their job to goddamn speak for God. Therefore, to have them be humanists would be counterproductive at best and downright insulting at worst. Moving on, though. Unless Brainstormer went somewhere. Can't hear you, Brainstormer.
That's because I was gone for a moment. Whoa!
Okay.
I sprained my foot again. Fuck, that sucks.
Oh, you have worse luck than me on that kind of shit, and that's saying something.
Well, granted, I was sprinting back.
Ah,
Yeah, don't sprint on a busted foot, folks. It sucks so hard.
it is a
Oh,
bad idea.
no shit. Okay, I'm back.
Mhm.
Okay, where was it? Karl Marx also described communism as naturalized humanism. He stated humanism is the denial of God and the total affirmation of men. Humanism is nothing else but Marxism. Communism is natural humanism, naturalized humanism.
Well, while I agree with Marx's summation that humanism is the absence of God and the ultimate exaltation of men, because that's why it's called humanism. It could also be termed human centrism if you wanted to put it that way, because it is an ultimately human centric view of existence. But he basically just said that to give he basically just said the rest of that shit to give credence to communism, which, even though I am a FDR or Scandinavia style social democrat, communism is cancer and can fuck right up.
Right.
So I will say this: what Marx called communism and what everybody else who followed communism said was communism are two very different things. It's one of the reasons why, in his old age, Karl Marx famously said he's not a Marxist, because everybody took his ideas to the stupidest possible conclusions and then ran off a cliff with them.
Chrononaut says we can at least give this man credit for trying to give an explanation, not yelling at fans. Advertising.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it could be worse. You could have said it was a feminist movie. And then we would have both cringed into oblivion.
Right. Reeves added he would have taken it in stride if Warner Brothers turned him down. If they don't, then I won't do it, and that'll be okay, the director said. I was really lucky that they said yes.
Yeah, good for you, Warner Brothers. You made yet another good decision, probably. Because if this movie is as good as it looks, then we're off to the races. Also, I will say this: it makes absolutely perfect sense to make a humanist version of Batman, because Batman is probably the quintessential humanist superhero. Because his whole thing is about the peak of human potential and the exaltation of scientific methods over like supernaturally oriented ones. So yeah, if any motherfucker in the DC universe is a humanist, it's Bruce Wayne.
Right.
Also, he's been known to be directly apotheistic, which is someone who doesn't give a shit about gods. So yeah, it makes perfect sense for Batman to be a humanist. Probably more sense than any other character in the fucking DC universe.
He disclosed it is the emotion of a story that gives him. Found in the comics, there's a little mistake there in the writing. Maybe I might be reading it wrong. No, it's gives because I think it's verb in this context. So
No,
yeah.
it is. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. The drive to make something. All his technical circuits start firing at that point. He added he'd be lost otherwise. It's not even like it's an approach that I take, like it's some kind of idea of, wouldn't it be great? It's sort of the only thing that allows me to understand how to do it. I can only understand where the camera goes and how to talk about the story, how to write the story, how to talk to the actors, if I understand emotionally what it is I have to do. Otherwise, I'd be lost. I don't have much to say about that because I
Yeah,
don't.
that's a perfectly eloquent thing to say. Where he's conflating this with humanism, I don't know, because humanism is very much focused on human reason more than anything. Although it is very much tied in with materialism, consequentialism, and hedonism. So I guess that might be where he's getting kind of the emotional aspects from. But I'm just saying, Matt, you don't need to defer to humanism to get that kind of emotional connection. You just need to understand people. It you He's essentially in this instance kind of doing with humanism what feminists do with um Matt Reeves in this instance is kind of doing with humans and humanism what feminists do with feminism and women. Like, you don't need to be a humanist to speak for humanity, and most humans, I would wager, aren't humanists.
I'm an
So,
optimist.
huh?
I'm an optimist.
Yeah.
Wait, is that? I don't. Is that a philosophy? I'm not entirely sure if that is.
Um, yes, it is a philosophy, although I've never actually gone ahead and looked into the actual history of it.
Hmm.
And I'm not even sure if it's an idea complex enough to have a history, but I'm assuming it probably does have one because cynicism does, and cynicism is kind of the opposite of optimism.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, right. Okay. Humble brag, says Chrononaut at 8:30. I'm not entirely sure what he means by that.
Yeah, I don't know what it means either.
All right. So where were we? Where were we? Right. Okay. As for the characters, Reeves detailed what drew him to explore the brokenness of Bruce Wayne. Wanting to avoid an origin tale, Reeves was intrigued by the struggles that formed Bruce as well as his unconscious shadow self.
Okay, this is interesting because he brings up the shadow self, which is something something heavily utilized by Carl Jung, but it's different from humanism. So I'm betting he's probably just gonna do a grab bag of like late 19th, early 20th century philosophies. It seems like if he's deferring to Jung's concept of the shadow self, which is sort of the unbound ego, or all of the aspects of you that you repress.
So
Um,
basically, like Batman. That's what he's saying, right?
yeah, and again, if there's a hero uh who using a humanist lens with makes sense, and using a psychological lens with makes sense, it's Batman. So I'm totally on board with this. I'm marveling at the degree to which he seems to be overthinking this, because he, he Batman is a straightforward enough character that you could come to the same conclusions as you would here without the psychological or philosophical woo. And I know it's me saying this, but yeah, the woo in this instance isn't necessary, Matt. Just
Okay.
do Batman correctly, and you'll essentially be making the same movie.
Okay. So Chrononaut says, "I am doing my job," is what he said. He might have a good movie. He is trying to sell it with an ism. Genius. Producer was humble bragging. Okay.
Yeah, the unnecessary humanist wrench being thrown into the works here is kind of bugging me. I'm I'm glad that directors exist who think about this shit, and I'm even more glad that there are directors that exist that think about an ism other than feminism. But being that as it may, it seems like unnecessary intellectual sort of self-wanking.
Yeah, I can't really confirm nor deny Dalton because, again, I'm not big on philosophy.
Yep. That's what I'm for. I'm here to do the majority of the talking and to make unnecessarily abstract points about shit that most people don't give a shit about to know about.
And I'm the fun comic relief who also owns the channel. I wanted to do not an origin tale, but a tale that would still acknowledge his origins and that it has formed who he is. Like this guy, he's majorly struggling, and that this is how he's trying to rise above that struggle. But that doesn't mean that he even fully understands, It's that whole idea of the shadow self and what's driving you, and how much of that you can incorporate, and how much of it you're doing that you're unaware of.
Okay, this Matt Reeves clearly understands at least the basics of Jung's shadow self. Well done. What this has to do with humanism, I don't know, but because again, they're two entirely separate things. And if anything, Jungian psychology sort of differs back to sort of the Platonic realm of rationalism than humanism. So you're mixing and matching philosophy here. Not that I mind, but you claimed to be making a humanist movie, and then to explain yourself, you reach for Carl Jung, who is basically rebranded Neoplatonism in a psychological context.
Mm-hmm.
So I ultimately I give this philosophical effort about a C minus.
Chrononaut says, I can see him at a party explain the concept to Hollywood elites. It is an old idea, an ism, lol.
Well, again, I'm just grateful there are still isms in Hollywood that have clout other than feminism and deconstructivism and postmodernism, frankly.
There should really be a reconstructivism. Reconstruct.
Yeah, yes, there most definitely should be, and if I have anything to say about it, there will be by the time I'm dead. But unfortunately, at the moment, it's let's deconstruct everything to figure out how it works and put nothing back together. It reminds me of that one episode of Ed and Eddie where they try to figure out how the world works and they end up breaking everything.
Probably. Anyway, Reeves then tied back to his interest in emotions and went into how he is going to use that to say something about corruption, a topic he thinks is more relevant than ever. Okay, well, I think we need the context of the quote, so.
I think that's a little bit of a dig at politics is going a way I don't like, therefore we need to despair about corruption again. Derp. But
Well, I think a lot. I'm sorry, Don.
Yeah, on the scale of subtle digs at Trump or things not going his way, I will take this because I don't want to police other people's opinions as long as they don't shove them into literally every crevice of civilization. So if he wants to have a little snide dig at things not going his way, then that's fine.
Yeah.
As long as he doesn't go on a 20-minute ramble about Orange Man Bad.
Yep. The weird thing is, I always never get why people always, because it always feels like when they talk about a theme of corruption, it's always about like those in power and stuff. And I get that. That's a normal thing, with power, absolute power comes absolute corruption and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what about the corruption of a soul, corruption of innocence, corruption of love, and stuff like that. Like those kind of things.
I totally agree. I wish that aspect of corruption was explored more.
You know what would have been funny if corrupt had showed up as soon as we started talking about corruption.
It really would have, but unfortunately the stars didn't align correctly, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So let's get into the quote for the context. There's something in there that feels very psychological, very emotional, and it felt like there was a way of exploring that along with the corruption in this place, Gotham. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, Gotham itself is hell on earth, essentially. So
Yeah, it's basically here is everything wrong with big city living made con concrete.
as a guy who lives in technically a big city, it's not as corrupting as you'd think, but I can see the problems.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this feels very current. I think it always does. There's almost no time where you can't do a story about corruption, but today it still seems incredibly resonant, and maybe, from my perspective, maybe more so than maybe at other time.
Okay, you know what? That's fair. He actually made an attempt to universalize his statement. He didn't just go, this particular time right now is particularly bad. He actually tried to go, no, you can say that about literally every time in history if you want to. He did do a little bit of special pleading on his own behalf because something most subjectivity, but at least he was self-aware enough to go, but I can see how you would make a similar argument with every era of human history.
Okay, so where was all right? Production on the Batman shut down due to the coronavirus pandemic. It was meant for a June 2021 release, but might not make it if quarantines continue any longer. No word has come from Warner Brothers so far about the film getting pushed back again. Reeves also has a new series, Tales from the Loop, streaming on Amazon.
Um, Note to Warner Brothers: anytime but November. If you have to move the Batman, move it to a time that isn't November, so it doesn't have to compete with Doctor Strange.
So while we're waiting for the article to load, even though that, and I'm still kind of confused what Matt Reeves was trying to say.
I think
'Cause,
he was. I think he was more. I think he was more confused.
mhm,
To be honest with you, I think he reached for any philosophical justification he could to get his ideas out, and humanism and psychology is just what stuck.
okay. I am so excited for this movie, and I do hope that productions finishes, like it can start up again soon and like finish. And
Again, like I said, I have no problem with his perspective on this because it seems like he just used some highfalutin academic woo to justify what everyone already should know about Batman. So it may like it makes sense for Batman to be a humanist character. So have at you. It's kind of like if somebody made a question movie, I would expect the person making that movie to study Randian objectivism because the question was literally designed by Steve Ditko to basically be objectivism the character. Um,
yeah, yeah, I got nothing really to say. Don's pretty much saying everything. Again, I'm excited for this movie, and I don't know where people were getting the whole woke thing from.
I think because there was actually an attempt by the social justice army to co-opt humanism. See, back in around like 2013, there was this thing called Atheism Plus, which was basically a bunch of woke warriors being like, how can you be a proper atheist without believing in the patriarchy and the wage gap? And why aren't there more female atheists? It must be because atheism is an all boys club and women are oppressed in the atheist community and shit. And when that was effectively done, they latched on to humanism and tried to establish Humanism Plus. Also, Brie Larson said that Captain Marvel was humanist. So I'm wondering, it's probably just people sort of think that humanism is the next big buzzword. And frankly, I would be annoyed if it did, because as much as I am not a humanist by any stretch of the imagination, and as much as I find humanism to be annoying as a philosophy, it ain't no feminism. Humanism is at least internally consistent, even though I think its premises are flawed.
Speaking of feminism in movies, we have something about Birds of Prey, because that has kind of become something of a
mascot for our channel, more or less.
More or less, yeah.
Or I guess a better word would be a nemesis, because Joker is more of a positive mascot for our channel.
Right. So yeah, it's just we talked about Birds of Prey a lot. Hell, I even did a video where I rewrote the movie. Anyway, okay, where was I? Right, okay, so this is from the Hollywood Reporter. This was published April 3rd, April 3rd. Anyway, this is by Brian Davids. Birds of Prey filmmaker Cathy Yan reflects on box office and scenes she fought for. Right. In a wide-ranging interview, the director delves into the Ewan McGregor moment she felt was crucial. It was risky, and the aftermath of the opening weekend on the female-led film. What I was most disappointed in was this idea that perhaps it proved that we weren't ready for this yet. Okay, hold on. It's not that we weren't ready for this movie. It's more of this movie was bad, and just didn't capture audiences as I think the director was hoping to do.
All right, Miss Yan. Since the 80s, there have been female-led action movies. The first female-led superhero movie in the modern sort of set of eras was Supergirl, which came out just a few years after the original Christopher Reeve Superman. It bombed because it was terrible, but as we just went through, there are characters like Ellen Ripley, Sarah Connor, Nancy Drew, Wonder Woman. All of these characters have had strong presences in pop culture since time immemorial. Hell, if you really want to go back pretty far, just look at the Sherlock Holmes series. Who was the one person, aside from Moriarty, to ever outsmart Sherlock Holmes? Irene motherfucking Adler, who was a upper crust woman who basically married around the entire royal set in the Holmes universe in the 1800s, and she managed to outsmart Sherlock Holmes. So don't be telling me that because Birds of Prey was bad and ideological propaganda, that it's some reflection on what women need to do, or what the fate of female characters is. Once again, for the rafters, feminism is not synonymous with women, and it is not synonymous with womanhood or femininity. If you don't want functional female characters, if you want feminist characters, then you're going to end up getting rejected because people, including women for the most part, do not like feminism. Many women actually get really pissed off that feminism is expected to speak for them, and therefore they do not support feminist stripe. Moving on.
Right. Okay. Few films are held to higher levels of box office scrutiny than comic book movies. Yeah, no, I guess that's true, actually.
Because the old guard film press is still waiting in vain for a day when comic book movies will go bust because they don't think the genre is valid or has anything worthwhile to say.
Well, fuck those guys.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was doubly true for the R-rated Birds of Prey, which stars Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, the breakout anti-hero from 2016 Suicide Squad, which helped propel the character to new levels of popularity.
Oh, okay. Let's be crystal clear here. Harley Quinn's popularity comes from the 90s animated series. She's one of the few characters in modern comicdom that didn't actually originate in comics. She originated in the animated series, which was the formative exposure to superheroes of an entire goddamn generation. Thank you very fucking much. Don't be giving Margot Robbie's incarnation more credit than she deserved. Especially considering that even the people who said that Harley was the best part of Suicide Squad were fully aware that she wasn't a very good representation of the character. In fact, Hot Topic Bimbo made several appearances to everyone that I saw talking about it.
Yeah, I really don't want to get into the costume because I've said my fair share about those costumes for Harley Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no. And again, we've done a review and talked about this movie ad nauseum, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And just it was a bad movie, I think, objectively.
Yeah, it's difficult to make a propaganda movie, and Birds of Prey was very much designed as a feminist propaganda movie. And because feminists are a vanishingly small minority in the world, it was only popular with those feminists who were in positions of power, which a staggering number of them are, and therefore it didn't resonate with the populace. You essentially expected to make the feminist equivalent of a Pureflix movie, and then were surprised when it performed basically like the feminist equivalent of a Pureflix movie.
When Birds of Prey opened behind expectations to 33 million in early February, it was largely seen as a disappointment, despite earning strong reviews and having a budget of 82 million. A relatively modest figure for a comic book adaptation. It's not even an adaptation, though.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a Harley Quinn power trip guest starring the Birds of Prey, kind of, sort of, maybe.
Like, again, if you guys actually do want a Birds of Prey movie starring the Birds of Prey, go to my other channel, Brainstormer of Pop Culture. I did a rewrite there. You just gotta look through the list of uploads.
Mm-hmm. Also, we did a review of it on this channel a couple podcasts ago, and I don't remember the number.
It was in February, so 2 months ago. I got no idea.
I'll look it up after.
Anyway, where was I? No, yeah, it's like, for the record, some of that 33.3 million is my money. Like a small portion of it, obviously, but still. I
Mhm.
went and paid that to see that movie, and I do deeply regret it now, obviously. But
Yeah. I pirated the movie, and I am not ashamed to say so.
yeah, because you didn't spend money on it. I did. How bad do you think I feel?
And yet you were a lot kinder to it than I was.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I think it was shit from a storytelling standpoint, but I think storytelling, kind of acting wise, character wise, but I respect it on a technical level.
Yeah, I mean that $82 million didn't go to waste. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Though, granted, it's not. We said it was a meh film. Not it. It wasn't like super bad or anything. It's meh.
Yeah.
It was boring, honestly. Anyway, filmmaker Kathy Yon, who made the jump from independent film to studio filmmaking with Birds of Prey, acknowledges some personal disappointment over the narratives that emerged over its performance. Okay.
You mean you didn't like that people had different explanations of its failure than you did, and you
Yeah.
didn't like that their explanations were not kind to the fact that you basically tried to make a feminist propaganda movie that
Um.
wasn't loyal to its source material and was extremely poorly plotted.
All right. I know that the studio had really high expectations for the movie, as we all did. There were also undue expectations on a female-led film, and what I was most disappointed in was this idea that perhaps it proved that we weren't ready for this yet. Jan tells the Hollywood Reporter.
Okay.
Oh,
What's
wait,
the
there's more. Let me finish this sentence.
uh,
That was an extra burden that, as a woman of color director, I already had on me anyway.
what in the flying purple people eating fuck are you on about, woman? The reason it had a large amount of scrutiny as a comic book movie is because comic book movies are currently the genre that is the most profitable and lucrative genre in Hollywood currently, and is primarily what is keeping Hollywood afloat financially. Let's just be honest about that. And again, Sarah Connor, Ellen Ripley, Nancy Drew, Irene Adler,
Oh, I grew up reading the Babysitters Club novels.
Babysitters Club, um, basically every Meg Ryan character, or well, I those aren't particularly action, but um, Mrs. Smith from Mr. and Mrs. Like there are dozens upon dozens of female heroes and heroines in movies going back to time immemorial, and they are beloved by the exact people that you are now, I'm certain, going to blame for Birds of Prey not doing well. Hell, Laura Croft,
Um,
Alice from Resident Evil, Samus Aran. You could Princess Peach even has a solid fan base on her own.
sorry, from comic books. Uh, the most obvious one would be Wonder Woman, but I also want to say Huntress, the actual comic Huntress.
Mm-hmm.
Oracle, Barbara Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
Cassandra Cain, again, comic version, not the movie version.
Right. And while we're on the topic of Wonder Woman, Ms. Yan, it made more than Suicide Squad and Justice League. it was actually the most profitable movie in the DC universe until Aquaman came out. I say most profitable because despite the fact that BDS made more, it was less profitable because it costed more to begin with. But point being, clearly they had no issue with a woman in that movie. And Gal Gadot, being as she is from Israel, is a woman of color. So don't be telling me that women of color had anything to do with it. You tried to make a propaganda piece. You assumed that the themes and the external socio-political woo of the movie would carry the movie over its technical failings, and you didn't think that the technical failings would be relevant, and you assumed that your moral caste system would be preferable to the public, even though only 8% of Americans and 17% roughly of people from the UK consider themselves to be feminists. And you were demonstrably wrong about this. And incidentally, Mijian, do you not remember how badly Justice League was received? And yet it still managed to make more than your movie. And also, you want to know something else that managed to make more than your movie? Ghostbusters Goddamn 2016, which is a historical feminist bomb at this point. It was the gold standard for feminist ideology crippling an otherwise viable franchise. And you managed to outdo it using the most popular genre in the current day and age in one of the largest universes of that genre. And you want to blame sexism for that. You may fuck
Also,
off,
possibly
my
racism.
darling.
You forgot racism as well.
But yes, you also want to blame racism because you pulled the woman of color card. Well, Brainstormer is a person of color, and I'm just gonna let him speak for himself on that one.
I saw your movie, Miss Yon. I paid money for it. I had to sit through a movie. Honestly, I wanted to leave within the first 5 minutes of the movie because I found it so boring. There was nothing that grabbed me, nothing of actual interest. I had only stayed simply because I knew I had to review the movie for my upcoming review of it. So, yeah, you have nothing to add. Like that. I did not like that movie. It was bad. So bad.
It was poorly plotted, poorly structured. The characterization was thinner than a piece of tissue paper.
And not to mention the pacing. The pacing was so like it was quick.
Harley spent 20 minutes looking for a sandwich, basically.
Yeah.
And do we need to bring up the fact that a plot point in the movie was Cassandra Cain literally waiting to take a shit?
Yep. So yeah, no, I hate it. As but I have to say this, as a person of color, God, I want to throw up by saying that. I objectively, in my opinion, did not like your movie. It sucked. So yeah. Shall we move on?
We shall.
Great. Okay. I already had. Oh wait. Sorry. So yes, I think there were certainly different ways you could interpret the success or lack of success of the movie, and everyone has a right to do that. But I definitely do feel that everyone was pretty quick to jump on a certain angle. Okay, first off, the marketing was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It gave people a wrong impression. Now, if it would have been a good movie with bad marketing, that could have been forgiven. But to be honest, looking back with hindsight, the movie, the advertising was accurate for the movie.
Yeah. It was a bad movie accurately portrayed with bad marketing.
Yeah.
And incidentally, normally when the critical set agree on a reason why a movie is bad, it just becomes the consensus. Normally, when studio heads determine why a movie is bad, it just gets determined as the market facts of the case. But when the actual viewers of your movie tell you in a fairly unified voice what you did wrong, you question the narrative because you don't like it. Even though the people telling you this are essentially the market research that should have been done on your movie. You created a product, the people that are normally inclined to consume that product told you to shove that product where the sun does not shine, and because they were somewhat emphatic about it in a way that you didn't like, you feel the need to undermine them rather than take the L, learn your lesson, and move along. Do you not see why we get so much mileage out of calling you people disingenuous hacks with no self-awareness?
I still got more to read, bud.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what was it? Jan also opens up about the scene she fought for at Roman Sionis, Ewan McGregor's club, where he humiliates a female patron out of sheer paranoia. That's not a bad scene, all things considered. Ewan McGregor does his best with that character.
But he's cartoonishly misogynistic in a way that virtually no one is.
I will be honest. I didn't get the misogyny until I don't notice social justice bullshit until it's like kind of pointed out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that as face value because again, he's like a villain. He's an asshole, and he's been an asshole to pretty much everyone, not just women,
Mm-hmm.
in the movie, from what I remember.
Mm.
But I mean, again, like he is a paranoid douchebag mobster who's scared of losing the diamond thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just. Plus, there's the goading from Zaz, not Gaz, Zaz.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So yeah, I don't think it's a bad scene on by itself. I think again with context, it lessens the scene. I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's just me.
Right.
Okay, so I'll be honest, we had to fight to keep that scene because it was uncomfortable. The director admits it was risky, and we had to fight to keep it at all. There are cuts of the movie without it. I think it's a huge turning point for Roman. It's a huge turning point for Canary. Journey Smollett Bell, and the
Mm-hmm.
way that we shot it was hopefully not about the sexual violence upon the woman. It was more about Roman, what he's capable of, and Canary seeing him for who he really is for the first time.
Sweetheart, you created a scene about misogyny in a Hollywood movie where the vast majority of people who you are working with agree with your philosophy and actively support it. Hell, Ewan McGregor himself actively supported it in interviews. He literally referred to the movie as being about, quote, everyday misogyny, unquote. I don't think you're being nearly as edgy as you think you do. You assume you're being edgy because you assume that it's still somewhere between the 1950s and the 1990s, in between, betwixt the Red Scare and the Satanic Panic. But I have terrible news for you. Well, actually, I have good news for you that has some terrible consequences, my darling. Y'all won the argument. The Satanic Panic is over. The Red Scare is over. As they should be. They were moronic, moralistic dipshittery of the highest order as well. You won the argument, though. Therefore, you guys are the aristocracy now. You are the powerful. You are the privileged. And as a result, your moral caste system is also drastically out of touch with every other motherfucker on the planet. And when every other motherfucker on the planet tries to explain to you in no uncertain terms that you are the aristocracy and you need to take your moralism and shove it, just like the Satanic Panic and Red Scare did, you don't get to dodge that because you're still oppressed and you're just edgy and you're being risky. You're not freedom fighters anymore. You won that argument. You won that argument handily. Now you are the powerful. And if a person with power acts like a freedom fighter with full force of all of the powers they've accrued, that is generally speaking where we get totalitarianism from. Most of the worst atrocities under authoritarian governments come from those authoritarian governments being paranoid about losing their power. I.e., the reason why business people got thrown into gulags in communist China or communist Soviet Union was because people were worried that capitalists would use their powers, the powers of wealth they weren't allowed to own, to undermine communism. And just like that, you are worried that if you don't control every aspect of the narrative, if you don't change civilization from the ground up, we'll be back in, a bizarro version of Pleasantville or a totalitarian version of Leave It to Beaver by tomorrow. But we won't. Fundamentalists and traditionalists, for the most part, get mocked, as they should. But when that mockery comes around to you, as it should, you lose your shit because you still think it's 1990 fucking 2. Morally speaking. But it ain't. You're not rebels, you're not freedom fighters, you're not being edgy. You're just being moral authoritarians with no self-awareness who still think they're fighting an evil enemy that fundamentally doesn't exist anymore.
So, yeah, moving on. Okay. Now she can fully cut herself off from him, and I thought it was I thought it was a really important scene, so we fought for it.
I'm genuinely curious. Who the fuck were you fighting to get this? Because again, Ewan McGregor was able to promote the movie in Hollywood using the fact that it was about everyday misogyny. And every company on earth at the moment has an HR and PR department absolutely filled to the rafters with feminist ideologues. So who the hell were you fighting? And how the hell could they fight you without getting pilloried in the court of public opinion within the space of a single tweet and a single afternoon? I demand to know who you think you're fighting. And don't just tell me the abstract notion of the patriarchy, because the patriarchy, wouldn't you know it, doesn't actually have that many actual flesh and blood representatives. It's sort of an abstract miasma, almost as though it's an abstraction within the confines of your own goddamn mind to replace the actual traditionalists that you were fighting back in the 90s during the Satanic Panic and Red Scares, or what I should say, the leftovers of the Red Scare and the full force of the Satanic Panic.
Right. Moving on. Where was I? In the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, Birds of Prey is one of a number of studio films that have arrived early than expected on home entertainment. So Yan is ready to deep dive into her filmmaking process. In a conversation with The Hollywood Reporter, the filmmaker also looks back on not making an exact sequel to Suicide Squad and suggesting Huntress, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, fight down a slide. I hmm, I don't really get that.
Yeah, I don't either. It doesn't really make any sense. I guess it's just a scene that she liked, but she's the director, so unless there was actual studio notes saying you shouldn't have this in the movie, I'm stumped as to what the fuck that has to do with anything.
Yeah, no, I don't get it either. And yeah, a part of me wants to get is thinking about getting the DVD just to see the behind the scenes because one, I like watch behind the scenes of the movie, but also just to see the thought processes for the whole
Yeah,
movie.
it's sort of an autopsy of how the fuck did we get here. Plus, bad movies have really interesting behind the scenes stuff. Good
Yeah.
movies do as well. It's just there's something special about watching a train wreck in progress.
hmm Anyway, how's it? Okay, so these are like questions that are being asked to Kathy On from the Hollywood Reporter. How's everything with you and yours? I'm okay. It's definitely a tough time to be in New York and to be a New Yorker, but it's actually made me more proud to be a New Yorker in a way by seeing how the city is trying to its damnedest to make it okay.
I I physically can't take any issue with that. Otherwise, I would feel like a dick.
Um, hmm.
Though I think it is kind of funny that now she gets the idea of a local identity or community identity, given that usually these sorts of people are the sorts of people that say borders are irrelevant, man. Everyone's just part of one world. We're all one,
There,
and
Jesus Christ, this interview goes on forever.
mm-hmm.
I think we might have to skip most of this.
Yeah. Let's just keep to the bits that we think we can actually comment on, I guess.
Um, yeah, hold on. Uh, Okay, this is interesting. I'm curious about expectations versus reality. When you think back to your expectations of how this entire experience would go, what differences surprise you the most in retrospect? Um, she answers, that's an interesting question. I don't even know what my expectations really was because this whole process was something so entirely new to me. I just came from one small indie, Dead Pigs, before this, one that doesn't even have distribution in the US yet. So I really have never gone through the process. I guess it's time to answer that question because I'm not really sure what I expected. What was definitely beyond expectations was some of the positive stuff, such as the real global reach of the film and getting really wonderful notes from people around the world who felt like they were seen for the first time in a movie like this.
Who wasn't seen previously that would have been gratified by this movie? Because I can tell you as someone who's bisexual and mostly prefers guys that I wasn't feeling any more represented by the everyone's vaguely lesbianic vibe in this movie. I imagine that Brainstormer wasn't feeling any more represented by any of the people of color, quote unquote, in this movie.
I honestly just didn't like anyone because they all felt like one, cardboard cutouts, and two, just dicks.
Yeah. And a means to the end of Harley's story because it's all about Harley after all.
I stand by what I said.
Mm-hmm.
That includes Harley. Okay, where was I? They felt like they could identify with the characters on screen, even though they were in a heightened world, a world stocked with stocked grocery stores. She laughs. So that's a joke.
Well, at least she's making the best out of my coronavirus.
Yep. It was still a world that was very aspirational. A lot of people, especially a lot of women and younger people. As a young person, I did not like this movie because it sucked. It was a bad movie. Just saying. Really felt like their voices, their type of people, they themselves were represented for the first time on the big screen where we first set off to make the movie. When we first set off to make the movie, making some of those choices, whether it's in casting or even in the way the characters look or dress, was somewhat deliberate. But I didn't really think about the global impact of those decisions, so it was really nice.
You wanna take the point about the costuming being deliberate?
If it was really meant to be deliberate, then goddamn fire your concept artist, fire your costumers, fire everyone in the goddamn wardrobe department for that movie. Serious.
Fire your own creative abilities because clearly they are on the fritz.
Hmm. Okay. There was okay. This was an interesting one I saw. Okay. Or was it? But yeah, no, that all those costumes sucked.
And I think I know what she vaguely means by deliberate. I think they were trying to be deliberately subversive because normal costumes are so hyper glossy and pretty and perpetuate my beauty ideals. Therefore, let's make costumes that are generic and banal that everyone can imagine themselves in.
You know
Because
what?
it's not like people come to movies for heightened ideals or inspiration to do better in the world or anything, Miss Yan.
You know what's weird, Don? I honestly I do say a lot that I'm a writer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But given our conversation from before the stream, where I talked about a character design I came up with,
Mm-hmm.
I somehow understand how to design a character in costume alone more
Mm-hmm.
than these fuckwits do, and they're goddamn professionals. I'm using air quotes, by the way.
Because they may have skills of costume designing, but they're either not using them at all because they have an ideology in their heads that says it's wrong to um, perpetuate any aesthetic standards, or they're actively misusing them to counteract any semblance of meritocratic aesthetic
Well,
standards.
you're also forgetting the third option, which is basically the wardrobe department are just following the lead of directors and bosses and
Well,
just
yeah,
aren't
but
really
either way,
putting themselves into.
it's the same problem. It's we need to undermine and subvert aesthetic standards because aesthetic standards are bad. It's like, okay, you could be this bad if you actually tried to do basically the opposite of every natural impulse you have. Please, for the love of God, don't, because I'm convinced it would break something in your brain and we'd never be able to put it back where it belongs. But that's basically, I think, a lot of what these people do, because they believe that their innate understanding um of aesthetics is bad. They essentially reverse engineer it. It's kind of like that line from The Incredibles: "The only thing strong enough to penetrate the Omnidroid is itself." Well, the only thing strong enough to counteract aesthetic standards is someone who knows aesthetic standards well enough to know how to reverse them.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically aesthetics from Bizarro World. We'll take every natural impulse we have to make things pretty, and we'll just do the exact opposite. And you do actually have to know a lot about aesthetics to properly counteract them. It's basically like um it's basically like drinking out of a toilet instead of shitting in it. You're using this for the exact opposite purpose it was intended for.
Uh-huh. But again, like here's my issue with the costumes, and I feel like I've talked again. I feel like I've talked ad nauseum about the costumes of Birds of Prey and Suicide Squad to a lesser degree.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Granted, I think Suicide Squad did somewhat better for Harley Quinn in terms of costuming, but I'll get to that. I'll get to that. Because you remember the character design I had talked about beforehand, before the stream, and where it kind of gave off this impression of the character being a villain, even though technically he's a hero. Like in terms of his design, he's supposed to look like a real big bad guy,
Mm-hmm.
but he's a good guy, and that's the idea. I think that's how you subvert the kind of trope.
But in a way that isn't anti everything we understand about storytelling and writing and artistic merits.
Yeah. And that's all I'm saying about that character, folks, because I do intend, like, some ideas I have or come up with that I talked with Dom pre-stream, I do tend to actually make. So, not going full detail there because I don't want some jackass to steal it from watching these.
That would be the most awful feeling in the world to see like a new movie or TV show coming out and it's your idea, but done worse because it wasn't actually made by someone who knew the idea in its full extent.
Yep.
It reminds me of the hey, you ever seen the movie Big Fat Liar?
Yep.
I feel like that would be um Frankie Muniz and Amanda Bynes in that movie would probably end up being like you and me if someone ever stole one of your ideas.
Well, for one thing, I wouldn't be that creative. I just find the guy and punch him in the face. That's just me. Short, sweet, and to the point.
True, I think I would have to convince you to ruin his life like he deserves to be. Because if somebody hurts one of my friends and steals one of their ideas and makes money off of it, I'm I'm not going to be kind, and I'm going to take every scheming, conniving, manipulative impulse I have, and I'm going to devote those exclusively to making the person's life awful that
Right.
fucked with one of my friends.
Don't we again? We're kind of on a timetable here, but anyway, so this will be like the last question we read from this article because again, we got like two others to cover and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I might bring up a picture just to show like how to do a better Harley Quinn costume, maybe
Mm-hmm.
while we're talking about this. But this is like the last question I want to cover from this article because it caught my eye when I was first looking through them. Anyway, while I vastly prefer Harley's new look.
That was the most comedically appropriate sneeze ever.
I should probably turn off my fan.
Probably.
Anyway, let me just finish the question and read a little bit of the answer. While I vastly prefer Harley's new look, I have to give you a lot of credit because I would have been too afraid to change her massively popular Suicide Squad look.
You fucking what? Either of you.
And okay, before you do, Dalton, I just gotta finish this question. Since that look became a pop culture phenomenon in 2016 and beyond, did you have any initial anxiety over this justifiable change? I will be right back as I turn off my fan.
I just I wow. Wow. It just there comes because usually I can get inside the stupid and at least figure out how it's logically consistent within their own goddamn worldview, but how? How can you honestly believe that either cinematic version of Harley is in any way desirable? God damn. Just how? I demand to know how does How do you brain this, you stupid, stupid cunts, both of you? And no, I didn't use the word cunt because they're women. I used the word cunt because it's probably my favorite swear word.
Well, interview. Well, the interviewer, I assume, is the writer of this article, and it's a dude. So,
Okay, so yeah, for future reference, I don't use the word cunt to denote women. I use the word cunt to denote cunts.
right.
I just the I my mind boggles. I got nothing. How can you honestly believe that either version of Harley, that either cinematic version of Harley, is in any way worthwhile? The fuck are you on, either of you? And Brainstormer, since costuming and film stuff is kind of your forte, please have at it because my brain does not want to brain this.
Right. Give me one moment. Okay. All right. So, well, first, Chrononaut apparently came back and said, "Revenge. I came back at Dawn's statement before the sneeze." Okay. Well, we're talking about costumes and stupidity and Harley Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, actually, Dawn, that's just the question.
I
Not the answer, and the answer is pretty much
okay. So read the answer, and we will see just how far this cockamamie rabbit hole goes.
right. Not really for the creative team. If you think about the pressure of or expectation on the movie too much, you can succumb to it. For us, it was very much grounded in character. It starts with a breakup. It's Harley finding herself and being her own hero in a sense. Suicide Squad was very much about her with the Joker, and the way that she looked was part of that. See, I agree with that part. Like the way she looked in Suicide Squad was like her being, like the whole choker with putting on it, and uh,
Yeah.
it shows his. Well, again, I don't like the design. It's it has elements that tell a
Yeah,
story visually.
like the concept of the actual concept of Joker as a modern thug type gangster in a modern context instead of a mobstery zoot suit type gangster makes sense. It's just that is probably the worst possible, most edgy, hot topicy, discount nihilistic goth bullshit way you could have done it.
Right? And I can't remember how long ago it was, but I said if Joker's supposed to be a modern day gangster, that would make Harley Quinn the hoe.
Yeah.
Yep. Um. So they looked like a couple. She literally had pudding choking her neck with a choker. Yeah, like I said, it and honestly, it did remind me of like a dog collar of some kind, like a
Mm-hmm.
choker. It was big and stuff. Again, like it looked like a leaf.
Which, given the kind of "I own you" subtext, makes kind of sense.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not discrediting that. Again, I hated the costume because like it wasn't Harley Quinn at all.
It wasn't even a particularly noteworthy or likable character. Like, if if the if one of the extras in the movie was wearing what Harley was wearing, that would honestly make more sense to me because it was supposed to be an average slub that the writer and the uh, character designer and the costume designer didn't focus too much time on.
Right. Um. So Ed Brewer asked, "Is there any version you like aside from the original?" And I assume he means Harley Quinn. I do like the Arkham versions of Harley Quinn. Um, specifically the Harley Quinn's Revenge version, simply on design and again character
Mm-hmm.
in that
And
story.
I will agree with the Arkham aesthetic, but also the Batman Assault on Arkham version that sort of took her jester outfit into a more modern and laid back context.
Oh, that's an interesting thing from Chrononauts. They tried to tell too many stories, and the required parts hit the cutting room floor in Suicide Squad. Yeah, yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
they tried to tell all the stories and ended up telling none of them. And
Kind of.
also misusing the Enchantress, which means that if we ever do get um a Justice League Dark movie in live action, we won't be able to use the first villain of the Justice League Dark in the comics, which was the Enchantress.
Hmm. Anyway, where was I? So there were obvious and del-
Deliberate.
deliberate decisions that I'm sure were made when designing her look for her character and central relationship in that movie. For us, she goes through that, and she goes through a physical transformation as well. So it was always grounded in the story that we were trying to tell, and in that case, it didn't really scare me. Okay,
How
again, bad.
how did you get from that justification to the pink flamingo, the mask in the Chicky Boom scene, but worse aesthetic in the movie?
I honestly don't know, Don. That's oof.
Yeah, because that's the part that doesn't make sense to me. I get her internal justification, but how, like, how, like, you're good with costumes, but how does any of her justification there lead you anywhere close to? I know we'll have her in basically a flamingo dancer's outfit.
And I think she was trying to go for some type of aesthetic that harkened back to kind of other era of movies, maybe like 80s or something, maybe 70s. I think like a 70s movie, like a 70s crime kind of movie.
Yeah, as a fan of old movies, particularly old pulpy movies like that, the 70s would like a word with you because I'm pretty sure the entire decade would be insulted by that, by your impression of them as something like that.
Yeah, where was I? But on top of that, I think her approach for to her was to still make her feel confident and fun, and it's still flattering, even if it's weird. Even if it's a weird, hideous haircut.
Okay, so you're fully aware that it sucks aesthetically. You're fully aware that you fucked up.
You know what's weird? You know what's weird? The costumes would be fine if I think I would be more fine with it if they had the original Harley Quinn color scheme. You know, the black and red. Red.
Yeah, it would at least make more sense. Now it's pink and blue that's the Harley Quinn aesthetic. Pink, blue, and white.
Oh, okay. Ed Brewer asks, should she be recast in the movies? Is it just an aesthetic thing?
I
Again,
don't I don't blame Margot Robbie for the most part with this. She did as well as she could with what she had. But for one thing, she sucks at doing the sort of Bronx or Brooklyn accent. If they ever reboot Harley Quinn, I need someone who can actually do a Brooklyn accent. For the love of fuck.
yeah, maybe get an actress who's actually from New York. I realize that's maybe asking a little too much, but still.
I actually thought the when they got the woman that does Bernadette on The Big Bang Theory to play Harley, and I think it was Batman versus Harley Quinn, she did a pretty good job. And hell, Kelly Cuoco does a pretty decent job on the Harley Quinn animated series.
That I will kind of agree to because I've seen clips of that show. Granted, I still Do not like that show, but
Yeah, it has issues, but she's doing a good job. Granted, I don't think they will ever top the original Harley, but you could at least try to be accurate to it.
yeah. And again, to answer your second question, it's not exactly an aesthetic thing. I mean, it kind of is, but also, I can't think of the word. It's I'd be fine even if they did different color scheme for Harley. It's just again these costumes don't have an actual. They don't match the personality of Harley Quinn.
They don't have enough of a style. Like how the thing I normally wear on a regular basis is more comic booky than what we got in either of the Harley Quinn movies. Like how as intentionally grounded as the Unbreakable trilogy was, David and Elijah's superhero and supervillain get-ups were more comic booky, especially at the end of Last, than anything that Harley wears throughout either of those movies. She just looks like, oh, I'm zany and I'm kind of effeminate, not effeminate, but feminine and prissy at the same time.
Yeah, again, it's hard to really explain. It's just there's no real consistency with the costumes of the live action Harley Quinn.
There's no real character or even any like. There's nothing informative about the aesthetic. Like
Again,
you,
like I said though, that even though the Suicide Squad movie still sucked and the costumes sucked, I
Mhm.
still think it did a better job of like telling a story somewhat.
Yeah, because you had Thug Joker, Thug Life Joker, and then you had
Oh,
his pretty blonde bimbo that he stuck around with.
yep. And she matched that. She matched that in the costume, and again, like with the choker, with pudding, and stuff. It
It
works with.
it also kind of harkened back to the old thing that I think it was Bruce Timm that used to say the Joker is like a toxic bully jock, and Harley Quinn is the cheerleader that is too good for him, but for whatever reason always sticks around with him anyway.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's a weird, complicated thing. I think talk about like aesthetic and stuff with Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
Anyway, where was I? Uh, Margot can pull so much of that off, and it was fun to take those risks. It was fun as women to gather around with hair, makeup, and costumes and go. Okay, what do we want to wear? What looks good on her? What's fun? What feels current, relevant, and now? That's the major issue. You focused on being relevant, and again, air quotes. The thing with a costume, especially in a comic book movie costume, is that you don't make it relevant. You make it timeless.
And what's more, speaking as someone who does actually f- spend a lot of time thinking about his personal aesthetic, usually the easiest way to make yourself look like shit is to worry about fashion trends. The the best way to actually give yourself an aesthetic is to embrace yourself to the fullest possible degree you can and let that be your guide. Because if you do that, then you're the one setting the trend, not the one responding to the trend. And if you wear the right thing, you will resonate with such confidence that other people will want to start dressing like you instead of the other way around. The most shallow exercise when it comes to how you look is to worry about fashion. Just, if anything, worry about actualizing yourself and let the chips fall where they may. And costumes are always kind of a similar thing because the whole point of The whole point of a lot of costumes is this is the true face. This is what lies underneath the civilian identity. This is when the character is in their fullest, the fullest actualization of themselves.
Right.
As any comic book fan knows, Bruce Wayne is the mask, Batman is the actual character. When Superman wears his brightly colored spandex, he does so as a symbol for, truth, justice, and the American way, and hope and goodness and an ideal to strive for. When Wonder Woman wears her stuff, it's basically wearing tokens of every deity that she is tied with. Like her lasso, I'm pretty sure actually comes from Aphrodite in the original comic lore, and she's also in the movies in particular, like that's basically the Amazon's power armor. It's every advantage they could give her to use, and she looks like a classical Greek goddess because, well, she kind of is one, and so on and so on and so on. You could literally make an entire show about superhero comic book aesthetics. Hell, even The Incredibles had Edna Mode, who is probably one of the most beloved characters from that movie. And there's a good reason, because we can totally imagine someone who spends their entire life focused solely on actualizing superhero aesthetics.
It's funny. In the comic Invincible, which I read, granted, I haven't read much of it lately because I haven't been able to get other volumes and stuff. I really got to invest in omnibuses. Anyway, there is actually a tailor who does superhero tailoring.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have to say. Is, it's like just wanted to bring up that since you brought up Edmund Mullen, I thought I'd bring up that guy too. I can't remember his name for the life of me.
Speaking of which, can you imagine the absolute hissy fit that Edna Mode would throw if she saw a supervillain wearing anything that Harley Quinn wears?
Woof.
I just you could try Edna Mode for murder, I think, if she saw this.
Yeah.
She would be so affronted in her sensibilities that she would lose her mind and become a villain just to strangle a bitch.
Weird thing is, the one who I think the only character who had the best costume in Birds of Prey was Black Mask, specifically like for the third act.
When he was actually wearing the one thing he's actually supposed to be goddamn wearing.
All right. Chrononaut says they made a huge mistake. They're telling, not showing, and it shows. Yes, it does, Chrono. Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what was I? So it became just a really fun exercise, one that we felt women would understand and also be excited to see.
What woman would willingly wear that aesthetic? I demand to know. Provide me an example, because if there's anyone more choosy than me about the shit they wear, it's the average middle class movie consuming woman. And I know I just made myself sound extremely shallow, but I've already elucidated my reasons, and they're not basic bitch aesthetic bullshit.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I did bring up like a couple pictures for the show, like what the Harley Quinn costume could have been, and like how like you can change Harley Quinn's look. I think as long as it portrays the core aspect of that character, I think that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
All right, hold on. Chrome tab. There we go. That's the first one. I realize it's a little small, but
Can you zoom at all?
I do not think so.
I think
No.
I think it's like Control Plus on the
Hmm.
computer.
Okay, hold on. I don't think my computer has this function, unfortunately. Maybe I should have just opened it up in Google. Picture was bigger there.
Maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, these are a couple designs for Harley Quinn, and not all of them have like the black and red aesthetic, but they are distinctively Harley Quinn.
Mm.
I think at least. Like, uh, okay, you know what? I am going to. I'm going to go back to Google and open this again because it's going to drive me insane.
All hail Google.
Thank you. Well, Google Images.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks. It's staying longer than I expected. Okay, so there we go. All right. So let me. There we go. Okay. From tab. Okay. So if you turn your attention to, I guess it's the right of the screen. No, wait, not. Yeah, the right of the screen. You'll see the image. The same image I had pulled up, but now kind of bigger.
Mm-hmm. You could try clicking on it and see if that helps.
Yeah, but it goes to Tumblr.
Oh.
Yeah, Tumblr's not all cringe, believe it or not.
It's kind of like DeviantArt. If you look in the wrong places of DeviantArt, you will find absolute degeneracy, unironically. But
I guess I've been lucky on DeviantArt.
there's also people with extreme talent that for some reason nobody hires.
We have made videos about that. Don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, these costumes, like the one in the middle, all of them have a very clown-like or jester-like aesthetic, which is Harley Quinn, obviously, and matches like her relationship with Joker, Joker, Prince Crown, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, like the first one on the left of the image resembles more Harley Quinn, granted more of a psychotic roadside circus kind of freak show
And
look.
and yeah, and interestingly enough, I think it's important to remember that the origin of the name Harley Quinn is Harlequin, as in the clown character from Commedia dell'arte and also Mardi Gras. So if anything, that should be your aesthetic guide for redesigns of Harley Quinn.
Or just look up designs from fans and stuff and like try to incorporate something from them. Seriously.
Yeah, not all fans know what the fuck they're doing, but the ones that know what the fuck they're doing are definitely available and would probably do it gratis, which would save you a bunch of money. DC.
I mean, I'd still pay them just to be nice. I mean,
Well, obviously, but I'm saying, like, if somebody came up to me and was like, "Hey, we need somebody to give us an occult perspective on the next Doctor Strange movie. We're in the scripting phase and we want to make sure the magic makes sense." I would probably do that gratis. To be honest with you, just I would just be grateful that A, I was involved, and B, maybe the next Doctor Strange would be better as a
aha.
result of me being involved.
Okay, now I have it on a bigger one.
Aha.
Sorry, it's. I know this is taking longer, but the next article is still loading.
Mhm.
Okay. So, plus, I think it's a good breather.
Mhm.
All right, there we go. Ta-da! But yeah, like I was saying, like, oh, I didn't even notice the tiny ha-has in her bow tie that she was wearing, like on the left one.
As a frequent consumer of bow ties, well played.
Yeah, and again, like I said, like I like the face paint as well. Like it, again, it has a very jester side, like a roadside jester look, while also maintaining the kind of aesthetic of a Joker character
Mm-hmm.
with him. It's kind of that more darker reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, she looks hot. I can't deny that.
Yeah.
And then we move to this.
Although Margot Robbie never really needed super amount of help in that particular area.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying, like again, costume wise, it looks better, I think, than the ones we were given. And
Mm-hmm.
okay, the second one in the middle has kind of the color scheme of uh of um of the Harley Quinn from like the live action movies, blue and pink.
Mm-hmm.
However, this one I think works better um because again it has that kind of darker reflection of, I think, kind of a magician's assistant,
Mm-hmm.
like a murderous magician, and this and Harley Quinn,
Yeah.
murders. Yeah.
Stage illusionist.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and if anyone can tell, there's like a little bit of blood on like her skirt and what is that? A lapel? Not a lapel. The sleeve thing.
Cuffling.
Cuffling. Thank you, Dalton. And yeah, no, I do think this could have worked if we honestly, for a Suicide Squad movie, they should have made the Joker the antagonist.
Yeah. Also, this reminds me, did we ever do a reaction to the James Gunn version for the next Suicide Squad? Because he changed it again.
I don't think we did.
I like it better. It's still not entirely as Harley as I would like, but it's definitely better.
Yeah, and kind of moving on to the last one, which I think the Margot Robbie one does have tattoos,
Mm-hmm.
but I think this is an interesting one too because it has like all the kind of tattoos of like result, Joker and like Harley Quinn style, like the hearts and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and like cartoonish things, and I like it. And like again, like the costume, while it does keep the black and red aesthetic, it also kind of makes me remember like kind of Vegas showgirl kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why.
Yeah, there's shades of like Vanna White in there.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think the third one works for me best because like I think if we were to have kind of it works most for like Jared Leto's Joker.
Mm-hmm. Which I think we've finally seen the last of as far as things go. If
Yeah,
if Robert Pattinson's Batman does well, they'll probably reboot the entire Batman universe, and we will have seen the last of Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn and or Jared Leto's Joker.
right. And here's the other one, which I think would have been kind of if they were going to do with more of a Marvel style DC universe, maybe this could have been Harley Quinn.
Yeah,
Again, really talented artists out there, and they need more work.
that probably wouldn't willfully subvert bullshit for no reason.
Yeah. God damn, this thing is still fucking loading. Anyway, what the fuck? Wait, this was. Are you sure this isn't like an April Fool's article, Dalton? The canon one?
I I'm pretty sure we've already done the canon article, but
I
no,
think
it's
we.
not.
I think we started it, but we didn't finish it. Is the thing.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a joke.
Yeah, it just says like April 1st, so I had to be sure. Okay, so Chrononaut says I would charge them $1. Let's say the magic would be much better, much more real.
It would be. If Brainstormer can confirm that I have absolutely no problem troubleshooting magic systems like a motherfucker.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is from Gizmodo. Our fascination with canon is killing the way we value stories. This is by James Whitbrook, published April 1st. Yeah, we started this, but we couldn't finish it.
Do you remember where we left off? I
Uh,
don't remember.
Somewhere about. I'm seeing where we stopped, and hold on.
Because I had thought we finished it, but if we didn't, then
Wait, I think we might have. Yeah, I think we might have, folks. That's my bad.
okay. So to the Ezra Miller article, then I suppose.
Yeah, you're gonna have to give me a minute to pull that up because I gotta go back to Twitter and open that goddamn thing up. Apparently,
Unless you want to do the God of War one, because we do have
That's-
some time. It's only 10-ish.
let's try and finish the Ezra Miller one first.
Yeah, plus that's a little bit more current.
Yeah,
Ezra Miller decided to choke a bitch.
personally, I couldn't care less. The I'm sure it's out of context or something. So
Well, I mean, there's literal video footage, and it doesn't appear to be.
I mean, situation wise, like I'm not entirely sure what.
As far as we know, the woman in question essentially tried to start play fighting with him, and he was high at the time, so he thought it was literal. I think is how the story went,
Well, I guess we'll find out.
and then he proceeded to choke a bitch, which I find hilarious because he's the most flamboyantly effeminate motherfucker I've ever. Well, one of the most flamboyantly effeminate motherfuckers I've seen in Hollywood.
Right. Okay, so this is from independent.co.uk. Ezra Miller, DC fans call for actor to be removed as the Flash after video appears to show actor choking fan. Miller has yet to comment on the footage. This is by Jacob Stolworthy. Okay, hold on.
Thank heaven for British names.
Okay. Calls for Ezra Miller to be removed from the DC Extended Universe, which is not his actual name and was meant for a joke by another journalist. Found that out. Are gaining heat after a video emerged allegedly showing him choking a fan. In the video, which began trending on Twitter Sunday night, April 5th, a person who appears to be a 27-year-old actor is approached by a female fan who seems to play fight with him after spotting him in Iceland. In response, the man says, "Oh, you want to fight? That's what you want to do," before appearing to grab her by the neck and then pushing her into the back wall of an aisle truck parked behind her.
I'm not laughing at this woman's pain. I'm laughing at Ezra Miller being an absolute twat.
I mean, we kind of already knew that.
Well, I know, but there's says and does stupid shit in the name of a bass-backwards ideology and being a flamboyant homosexual. But then there's sees someone playfully banter fighting with them and hauls off and chokes a bitch because apparently he was caught off guard by it. Like, and I can totally see him being like, "Oh, you want to fight? That's what you want to do." And then like, props to Ezra Miller for having more testosterone in him than I thought. But goddamn.
Eh. Personally, I do think both parties are at fault in this. Seemingly, like, why would someone start play fighting with someone?
Well, I'm sure it was kind of just joshing, like how you'll see guys sometimes like playfully punch each other in the shoulder or something like that,
Ah, okay,
or like start or how girls will sometimes start randomly tickling people or each other. Something probably along those lines happened,
all right,
and then Ezra Miller, his brain short circuited.
gotcha.
His brain such as it is, which is to say not very functional apparently.
Right. It either way, it's a really stupid thing. Anyway,
It it's downright sociopathic to be honest with you, but I'm more stunned that someone so hilariously incapable of seeming threatening was able to manage this.
while some viewers believe the interaction was a harmless joke, since the woman appears to have a smile on her face, others point out that the person recording the video sounds concerned. Um,
Okay, well, if the woman was smiling, then she obviously wasn't in pain, and she has not yet, like,
press charges.
she hasn't pressed charges or anything, so it could just look bad. And let's be honest here, it is Ezra Miller, and I'm reasonably certain he's not that capable of choking anyone that hard, so it might just be that he choked her as hard as he could, and it didn't matter much.
Okay. Prio Prekio Kavianis. I'm sure I said that name wrong, and I'm sorry. The owner of the bar in Reykjavik has since told Variety that the incident was a serious one and claimed that Miller, who plays the Flash in the DCEU, had to be escorted off the premises. Okay.
All right. So there's at least a few angles on this, but either way, it seems as though Ezra Miller's kind of a crazy fucker, more so than usual.
Yeah. An unnamed source at the bar claimed that the actor lost his temper after being hassled by a pushy group of fans. While Miller has remained quiet since the video circulated, DC fans are calling for Warner Brothers to remove the Justice League actor from the role, with some suggesting that Grant Gustin, who plays the TV version of the character, take over instead.
Okay, irrespective of the reason why, I think getting rid of Ezra Miller is a good idea because he is, for one thing, he is a spaz, and I'm not saying that to disparage like autistic people or anything. I'm just saying he is a willful spaz, and if the Ezra Miller Gal Gadot fiasco was any indication, he is an arch, dyed in the wool, hard in the paint social justice warrior. And I wanna laugh also at the fact that once again, the ideology that constantly disparages toxic masculinity appears to be one of the most consistent and lucrative sources of it, i.e., male feminists are some of the worst people on the planet, even though they constantly apologize for being male and or having toxic masculinity. The person strongly against the heteronormative patriarchy just choked a bitch. So not saying it's necessarily indicative of the quality of all male feminists, but at what point are we going to establish that basically every time a male feminist makes it into the news, it's for doing awfully toxically masculine shit despite constantly disparaging their own masculinity and basically ritually flagellating themselves with it.
And we have some tweets here, talking about like recasting for Grant Gustin. I think he's fine as the Flash, personally. I think it's just mostly what he's been given lately in seasons of the CW Flash show is the issue.
I don't think taking the TV Flash and putting it in the movies would make entire amounts of sense. I mean, there is some precedent because, of course, there was the Ezra Miller cameo in Crisis on Infinite Earth, so I guess you could make that work, especially now that apparently all of the multiverses are scooshed into one universe as per the current CW canon. Um, but I think just straight up recasting it would probably be a better idea.
Yeah, and I don't care either way because mostly they're just gonna fuck over the character in the movies.
Unless they do the smart thing and basically treat this new Batman like it's the launch of an entire new universe and keep only the aspects of the previous one that made sense, like Aquaman, Shazam, and Wonder Woman. The sad thing is this means they will have to replace the Flash before the Flashpoint movie, and Flashpoint um is the best way to reboot the movies without completely contradicting the continuity.
Yeah. All right, so let me read. I don't know. Let me just check to see if there's anything else.
Unless, and I just got this idea, so I have to play it out because I think this would be a really good idea. Have you ever seen Memento?
No, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay, you know how the guy in the movie is the
Dude,
person he's looking for, but he doesn't know. What if they did a version of Flashpoint where the changing of the multiverse actually alters Barry's memory, and therefore we can open with a Flash that looks different from the Ezra Miller Flash, and the Flashpoint movie is about him figuring out that he looks and acts different because the multiverse has changed. What if it's treated like a mystery, and he slowly has to unravel the fact that he changed the universe?
that is badass as fuck.
Now you see why I kind of had to get it out because my brain just exploded with, oh my god, what if they did it this way?
Yeah, but unfortunately, probably won't.
DC, take this idea. I give it to you freely. Just don't fuck up your universe any more than you already have.
Yeah. Granted, I did come up with a. Like I said, like there was one time I was working on and I probably really should get back to that. What I call the DC DC Comics Movieverse.
Mm.
Flashpoint, that the version of Flashpoint I wanted to do was basically what was it? Oh yeah, like it was going to take place after the death of Superman, which was going to be a movie in my series of movies. And basically, the Flash was going to run back in time to save Superman instead of his mother, and that caused a whole bunch of problems and issues and stuff. And yeah, Basically, it was Flashpoint in name, not exactly in story.
Yeah, but yeah, if you do it as the um Barry is affected by the changes to the universe and has to unravel the fact that he did those changes, that would be the easiest way to do a version of Flashpoint with a different actor without acknowledging it at first, and also make a really good fucking movie out of it.
Mm-hmm. Funny enough, I am actually working on a rewrite of Crisis on Infinite Earths, the CW version.
Well, keep me apprised, and also the audience.
Yeah. It's just taking a while because I wrote like 4 or 5 pages of a script.
Well, you have nothing better to do as long as you're stuck in your house, so
So
your heart's content.
yeah, so where was that? So yeah, these are the tweets, like 3 tweets about replacing replacing Ezra Miller with Grant Gustin. And then there's something a little down here. The Independent contacted Miller's representatives as well as Warner Brothers for comment. Miller's standalone Flash film is due to be released in cinemas in 2022. And that is everything.
Hmm.
That was a very short one.
Yeah.
I believe we didn't finish this one last week. Or not last week.
Yeah, this one was
We do have the token one. Because I don't think we covered that one.
Which token one?
Fuck. I gotta check. Gotta find it again. It was from the Guardian, I believe.
Oh, yep. The Tolkien one. I thought you said token,
Nope.
and I was confused. But yeah, the token, the Tolkien one.
Oh, that's how you say it. I thought it was token.
Either one is technically correct.
Okay, Tolkien. Gotcha.
But
Yeah.
that will I think finish us off because it's fairly long because the writer likes to hear himself talk. And then if we have any time left, then we can attempt the God of War article.
Highly doubtful. Because again, knowing us and long articles.
Plus, knowing my tendency to spurg about Tolkien lore, because if I remember correctly, when we did the response to the soft magic system guy, and he used Tolkien as an example, I ranted for like 20 minutes about how Tolkien's magic system isn't a soft magic system. And if you knew anything about Tolkien, you would know that.
Should I start? Or do you have any other things to say before we do? Or
No, you should go.
okay.
Go for it. Proceed.
Tolkien's myths are political fantasy. This is right. Okay, first off, I've got to. This is by The Guardian. This was published Friday, the 12th, December 2014.
It's an older article, but I found it sweet because Sargon of Akkad did a or was it last week? Yeah. Sargon of Akkad did a response to it, and I felt that it was so stupid I had to say something.
Okay, so yeah, Tolkien's myths are political fantasy. In a world built on myth, we can't ignore the reactionary politics at the heart of Tolkien's Middle Earth.
No, I think we can actually do exactly that because the politics that you're going to bring up are not inherent to the work. They are you forcing a political narrative where one does not fundamentally exist. The closest thing to politics in Tolkien's works are how his experiences with war changed him as a person and probably allowed him to accurately portray what essentially amounts to PTSD in Frodo. But even Tolkien didn't like um, people viewing his works through a metaphorical or allegorical lens. He actively disdained allegory, and now you're going to turn his whole work into a big goddamn pile of allegories. And then you're going to act like they were inherent to begin with. You, sir or madam, are a fucking moron.
It's a dude.
What's his name?
Uh, Damien Walter.
Alright, Damien. You are a fucking moron. You are taking someone who actively disdained allegories and you're piling them full of allegories. Yeah. And also, I guess you could make a point about industrialization because of the way that things end with the Shire, with Saruman the White using his knowledge of metal and machines to basically ruin the unspoiled natural countryside of the Shire.
So, all right. So it's double-edged magical sword. Being a fan of J.R.R. Tolkien. On one hand, we've had the joy of watching Lord of the Rings go from cult success to arguably the most successful and influential story of the last century. And we get to laugh in the face of critics who claim Lord of the Rings would never amount to anything while watching a sumptuous, if absurdly long, adaptation of The Hobbit.
Okay, The Hobbit was awful. The Peter Jackson movies were awful. I still maintain that the 1970s version was amazing, and I love it still to this day. It was my favorite movie as a child for a very, very long time. So yeah, I fundamentally disagree on The Hobbit. They tried to turn it too much into Lord of the Rings, and it didn't need to be Lord of the Rings. And they also threw half of the Silmarillion in there for good measure, which I love the Silmarillion, but thanks to the fact that they for some reason felt the need to stick the Silmarillion halfway throughout The Hobbit, we'll never actually get a Silmarillion adaptation uh or multiple ones, because you probably wouldn't be able to do the Silmarillion in one movie. You'd have to do a series of them or a TV series. But yeah, we'll never get that now because they stuck half of that shit in The Hobbit and also ruined The Hobbit in the process. So already wrong on multiple counts.
Moving on.
Moving on.
Okay. On the other hand, you also have to consider the serious criticisms made of Tolkien's writing, such as Michael Moorcock's in his 1978 essay Epic Pooh. As a storyteller, Tolkien is on par with Homer or the anonymous bard behind Beowulf, the epic poets who so influenced his work. But as works of modern mythology, the art Tolkien created, called mythopoeia, both Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit are open to serious criticism.
Um, I have no problems whatsoever with Michael Moorcock. He created one of my favorites series of pulp novels that then turned into a really awesome series of comics by Roy Thomas. That being, of course, Elric of Melniboné, and he's awesome. So any criticisms I level at this article are hereby not directed in any way whatsoever at Michael Moorcock. Michael Moorcock is awesome, and I'm not even gonna make fun of his name.
Cool name.
Aside from pointing out that it can be made fun of, because it's literally Moorcock.
I'm giving you the disappointed eyes, Dalton.
I know.
Anyway, where was I? Okay. Do you understand why it takes a little consideration of what we really mean by the word myth? The word can be a bafflingly complex place. Why is the sky blue? What's this rocky stuff I'm standing on? Who are all these hairless chimps I'm surrounded by? The only way we don't just keep babbling endless questions like hyperactive 6-year-olds is by reducing the infinite complexities of existence to something more simple, to a stories that we call myths.
Okay, I think you may have just really oversimplified both storytelling and philosophy in general. You stupid, stupid bitch.
Okay. You have anything else to say, or
There's too much stupid if I get hyperfixated on this, so
okay?
moving on.
I'm just checking. All right. Science gives us far more accurate answers to our questions than ever before, but we're still dependent on myths to actually comprehend this science. The multidimensional expansion of energy, space, and time we call the Big Bang wasn't literally a bang any more than God saying, "Let there be light," was literally how the universe was created. They're
Oh,
both mythic ideas that point at an actual truth our mammalian minds aren't equipped to grasp. Okay, I just had to finish that. You go.
for fuck's sake, you are a hateful little bastard, aren't you, sir? Ah. We don't use myths to understand or translate science. They're two different languages referring to two different things. Myths can have moral value, they can have philosophical value, they can even have historical value, as we've seen in the case of the Iliad and the Odyssey, literally leading explorers and archaeologists to Troy, and uh, Plato's Dialogues of Atlantis eventually leading to the Minoans. But I don't know where the fuck you got off assuming that we use myths in any way to explain how the world works.
I mean,
Yes,
for a time we did, I'm sure, but
well, but usually it wasn't even referring to what science refers to as the world. It was referring to the sort of behind the scenes input of the the gods and the spirits and all of those metaphysical forces. People were less concerned of the actual physical water cycle mechanism of why it rained and more what caused those cycles to be put into place in the first place, i.e., it rains because a god sets up that water cycle and decides it should rain, more or less. That's the extent to which you can compare myth making to science, and I find it extremely shitty of you to even go there. Not to mention, you basically called every human that existed before, I'd say about 1860 a fucking moron. So you can fuck right off.
you good for now.
For now, yeah. I just the just rank misanthropy and the self-exaltation of I'm better than everyone who existed before 1600 is insufferable. I can't even.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna ask if you're good because I feel like you're not.
Just go, and I will ejaculate the rest of this later.
All right. Um, Myths are a lens through which we investigate the mysteries of the world around us. Change the myth, and you can change the world, as J.R.R. Tolkien well knew when, alongside other writers, including C.S. Lewis, he began to consider the possibility of creating new myths to help us better understand the modern world, or if not to understand it better, then to understand it differently. Tolkien borrowed the Greek term mythopoesis to describe the task of modern myth making, and so the literary concept of mythopoeia was born. You may go.
Okay. Fuck this postmodernist tripe. People don't people don't construct worldviews entirely based on narrative, and you can't just change the cultural operating system and act like that's going to change how people actually interface with the world. People aren't these blank slates you can just write random narratives onto, like they're all blank slates. People have fundamental nature. That's why when you try to stick a human into a narrative that makes no goddamn fucking sense, they balk because you fail to take into account things like evolutionary psychology and social psychology and, consumer psychology and what have you. When you don't take into account human nature and you try to get humans to follow a narrative, those humans will tell you that that narrative is full of shit. And that's always been the case for pretty much as long as humans have existed. In fact, one of the ways that a religion becomes successful is by jacking into pre-existing aspects of human nature. That's why traditionalism is so insidious, because it basically feeds into every negative impulse that human beings naturally have and tells them that they can just go hog wild with them. Therefore, all men are useful providers who are judged based on what they do, and all women are fragile, valued objects that are valued based on how they feel. And away we go with the fucking apocalypse that always leads to. You think you're smart because you think you can just change people's minds at the drop of a hat if you tell the right story. Well, you can't. Stories have value because stories inherently have value. If you try to concoct a story with no measurable merits or value to it, people are going to flip all kinds of shit at you. That's why Star Wars is currently in the shitter, because you took something that was based fundamentally on Joseph Campbell's monomyth, Arthurian legend, and ancient Roman history, and you undermined every single aspect of that. And you wondered why you got the wrong shit. Now you're coming for Tolkien, who literally was a mythology expert, and whose mythology expertise is what allowed him to craft such a solid world in the case of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and the entire sort of mythopia he came up with, if you want to use that word.
So,
Moving on.
one sec. Sorry, just had to clear the throat. Tolkien's myths are profoundly conservative. Both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings turn on the return of the king to his rightful throne. In both cases, this victory means the reassertion of a feudal social structure which has been disrupted by evil.
Okay. The reason why The Lord of the Rings focuses on a return of a king is because it's meant to resemble early feudal Europe, it is entirely possible that after the age of Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, that some form or other of democracy will come up organically within the context of Middle Earth, especially given that in the mythos of Middle Earth, the world was created by the songs of the Ainur at the behest of Eru Iluvatar, who is basically the god stand-in in that universe. And the first three songs of the Ainur were negatively affected by Melkor, also called Morgoth, who is basically the devil stand-in of the Valar. Whereas the fourth and fifth ages of the earth were not impacted in this way by Melkor because he was locked away when those songs were being sung. So we now are living after Lord of the Rings, we are basically living in a world without negative influences in it. So it's entirely possible that some democratic republic will arise perfectly out of nowhere because Melkor wasn't around to fuck with the song lyrics this time. But you didn't know that, did you? Because you didn't actually know or care about the actual mythos of the world in question. You just felt like shitting on monarchies, which is fair, but you can't act as though something based around feudal Europe wouldn't have monarchies in it. Especially given that the first sort of inroads to democracy within the British Empire were the stories of Arthur. That's the whole sort of subtext of the Magna Carta was sanctioned by myths of Arthur and Merlin basically creating this idea of the right monarch who listens to the people. And incidentally, that is the thing that makes both Aragorn and Arthur good kings within their respective stories. They listen to and care for the people and give them say as to what happens in the kingdom and are not considered to be above their subjects. You're basically bitching that there's a transition period between monarchy and democracy that this story takes place in the middle of and is actually leaning towards. You stupid, stupid bitch. Moving on.
Both books are one-sided recollections made by the Baggins family, members of the landed gentry in the Red Book of Westmarch, an unreliable historical source, if ever there was one. A balanced telling might well have shown Smaug to be much more of a reforming force in the Valley of Dale.
Okay, there is absolutely nothing in the text to suggest that any of the inputs from the Baggins throughout the story make them unreliable narrators. The only thing that we can tell that is actually even being narrated by Bilbo in The Hobbit is the fact that it has the same title as his memoir. And the narrator in Lord of the Rings isn't even goddamn Frodo. Yes, there's references to him writing a book that is relatively analogous to Lord of the Rings in the Red Book of Westmarch, but once again, there's absolutely nothing to suggest that he's an unreliable narrator. And even if he were, there are ways to get a true story around his personal biases. And I'm sorry, but as per the lore of Lord of the Rings, dragons were literally created to be the embodiment of greed by Melkor. So I refuse to believe that the force that literally burned people alive because they pissed him off one time is a valid reforming force in the Valley of Dale. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Moving along.
1 second.
Okay.
Alright. And of course, Smaug doesn't even get to appear on the page in Lord of the Rings, at least not in any form more substantial than a huge burning. No, wait. Of course, Sauron doesn't get to appear on the page in The Lord of the Rings, at least not in any form more substantial than a huge burning eye. Exactly the kind of treatment one would expect in a form of propaganda.
Okay, for fuck's sake. It is made very clear in the Silmarillion, which has no in-universe narrator of any kind, that Sauron and Melkor, respectively, want to ruin and or destroy all life. Because Eru Ilúvatar, the creator god of the Lord of the Rings mythos, has the secret power to give things life, and he doesn't want to give it to Melkor, so Melkor essentially resolves to smash his shit. And he convinces the strongest of the Maiar, which is Sauron, to join him in the quest to essentially smash all of Eru Ilúvatar's shit. When you look at it right, it's essentially an angel or a minor deity throwing a temper tantrum this entire time. It's where I want the power to give things life and you won't share it, so I'm gonna break all your things. Derp. And when you get right down to it, the ultimate effect that Melkor had on the world of Lord of the Rings is essentially just, I'm gonna play this instrument really badly and fuck up this song you're all singing. Because that's how Lord of the Rings works. It's literally created from the songs of the Ainur, who are sort of the angelic choir of the Lord of the Rings mythos. And Melkor decided to basically introduce the concept of evil into this song and thereby fuck it up. So yeah, he's an edgy brat who decided to break his dad's toys because he won't share that one thing he wants. So yeah, I'm not going to feel bad for seeing Sauron, who's essentially the angelic stooge of an archangel with a bad attitude, as the evil force that he is literally contracted to be. You know, in the Silmarillion, Sauron created werewolves and vampires just for the lulz, basically.
Dalton?
Sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
you're good. I'm just like, again, a little off topic, but a little off topic. Alright, we're left to take on trust from Gandalf, a manipulative spin doctor, and the elves in Mordor will lead us to kill humans and hobbits for even entering their territory when they say that the maker of the One Ring is evil. Could I, I might have something to contribute here.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Um. Well, I don't know much about Gandalf. I mean, I could, because again, I've never really been a big fan of Lord of the Rings, except for like the movies. Kinda. I only saw them like once or twice as a kid. But I believe in the elves. They kind of change their ways throughout the story of Lord of the Rings. And like again, they get called out on like their bullshit many times.
Yeah, and the reason in universe why the elves are kind of shit is essentially because they miss their home. See, before the creation of Middle Earth, there was a place in the Lord of the Rings universe called Arda, which was basically um the Lord of the Rings equivalent of heaven. And the things that were created were originally created in Arda. But when construction began on what would become Middle Earth, the elves, or a portion of them, decided to go and explore the new land. And this pissed off the Valar, who are essentially the gods of Middle Earth, so the elves got stuck over there. So essentially, the reason why the elves are pricks occasionally is because the elves are daddy's favorite child who didn't get what they want, and now they're pouting. I'm making a lot of child rearing metaphors today, but it works in the context of the story when you get right down to it.
Mm-hmm. And plus, isn't the One Ring confirmed to be like, well, one thing, all the ring wraiths are being corrupted by the One Ring?
Yeah. So as far as we see, the One Ring basically acts like a narcotic
Mm-hmm.
that corrupts everything it touches. So even if we assume that we're in some way being lied to or misconstrued by the characters telling the story, um, I'm sorry, but a thing that can literally corrupt any mind it touches other than the person that made it, probably a little bit dangerous and shouldn't exist, especially if the person that made it is the enemy of the person currently using the damn thing. And I'm sorry, which part of Lord of the Rings, if any, or the Silmarillion, if any, implies that Gandalf is a spin doctor of any kind? Like, where are you getting that? Did you just pick a random art or insult to disparage him with? Because, yeah, no. If anything, Gandalf's bias is that he's sad and doesn't want to do the job he's been asked to do. He he was actually originally going to be the leader of the White Council, until Saruman basically called in a few political favors from um Au Au Aulue, I believe, is the name, the Smith of the Valar, who basically wanted his star pupil to be the leader of the Order of Wizards, and he pouted until they let him. And Gandalf was just like, I don't want to go, but since you all insist that I go because you think I'll do a good job, I'll try to make you all proud. Yeah, so Gandalf, if anything, is too humble for his own good. Because since if he had actually wanted to do the job they asked him to do in the first place, he might have fought with Saruman a little bit more, and we wouldn't have had the whole siege of Isengard thing going on there. And if Saruman was less of a shit and maybe um kept in line by being second in command or something, maybe Saruman would have died a long or Sauron would have died a long time ago. Moving on.
Okay. Excuse me. Isn't it more likely that the orcs who live in dire poverty actually support Saruman because he represents the liberal forces of science and industrialization in the face of a brutally oppressive conservative social order?
In what way is Lord of the Rings conservative in any way whatsoever? if anything, it just goes to show that when civilization isn't doing well, there's less resources to go around. But as it so happens, at the very beginning of Middle Earth, there was something called the Years of the Trees, or the Elder Days, where basically everything was perfect, and it was the infiltration of Sauron as Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, that basically fucked everything up because the Valar thought they got rid of the big threat, which was Melkor, but they forgot that he had a Maiar servant named, I don't remember Sauron's original Maiar name, but essentially they forgot about Sauron, and then Sauron went and basically uh, continued doing his master's work and fucking everything up. So yeah, there's nothing conservative about there's nothing conservative about Lord of the Rings, but the parts that you would define as conservative are Sauron's goddamn fault, or Melkor's goddamn fault because he corrupted the song that made the world in the first place. Moving on.
Okay. The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings aren't fantasies because they feature dragons, elves, and talking trees. They're fantasies because they mythologize human history, ignoring the brutality and oppression that were part and parcel of a world ruled by men with swords. But we shouldn't be surprised at the wish to return to a more conservative society, one where people knew their place is so popular. It's the same myth that conservative political parties such as UKIP have always played on, the myth of a better world that has been lost but can be reclaimed by turning back the clock.
Okay.
I
If anything, Lord of the Rings is about the futility of trying to cling to the past. Because whenever a character tries to bring back the Elder Days by instituting more magic than there should be in the world at the time, it usually ends up in things getting fucked over. That was the whole selling point to Saruman from Sauron. He essentially promised him that if he served him, that Sauron would find a way to bring back the Elder Days. So once again, even assuming you have any idea what you're fucking talking about, pro tip, you don't, um, it's Sauron's fault. Everything you're blaming the West for, the West of Middle Earth for, is kind of Sauron's fault, or the stuff that wasn't directly Sauron's fault was his master's fault, which is Melkor. Because Daddy had the power to give things life, and he wanted it, so he decided to smash everything shit until he got his way.
Also, I've never really gone that whole theme. I mean, like I understand it when it becomes like the newer, better world causes like how in sci-fi that
Yeah, how people are resistant for. I agree. The idea that we shouldn't be striving for something better and we should just become resigned to some cynical loss of innocence and we're never going to be able to restore ourselves back to.
I always thought why not, and again this is just me, but why not have a theme of the compromise between the two things?
Yeah, like
Progress,
or or
like,
or way or utilizing them differently somehow.
yeah, just something that bridges the gap between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can move forward and forge a better world, but I think if you can realize the ideals that the old world had or tried to, but they did fail, obviously.
Yeah, learn from your mistakes rather than trying to constantly cling to the past, or
Yeah.
or something along those lines. But it's not talking about learning from mistakes. It's literally saying, yes, the past was better, but something, 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 grow up so you don't get to have good things anymore because we say so. Yeah, I agree. It's a very stupid theme. It's kind of like when Prospero gives up his magic because reasons that are never fully explained. I'm just like, but you could keep the magic and just lift the spell that you're trying to break over your enemies that you cast. Like, hello?
Yeah. All right. Where was I? What was it? Whatever the limitations of his own myth making. Sorry. Tolkien's genius as a storyteller rekindled the flame of mytho- mythopia for generations of writers who followed. Today, our bookshelves and cinema screens are once again heaving with modern myths, and they represent a vastly diverse spectrum of worldviews, from the authoritarian fantasy of Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game to the anti-capitalist metaphor of the Hunger Games. The latter is so potent with that the three finger salute given by Katniss Everdeen has become a symbol of freedom. What clearer sign could there be that the contemporary world is still powered by myth?
You thought the Hunger Games was anti-capitalism? Oh my darling.
If anything, it's I assume anti-authoritarianism or dictatorship or something like that.
I would go so far as to say it's anti-communism because it's one party controlling an entire state and uh, the outlying territories are all kept in a state of like non-technological servitude and they're relying on the government for like food rations and shit. So
Yeah. And Ender's Game. I read that book and did like I had to do a book report on it for high school.
mhm.
I never really got any like authority. I mean, like I understood like the world government and stuff had its issues, like any government would.
And the military aspect.
Yeah, but
I think the author is saying that because Orson Scott Card is a bastard, um, and fucking crazy, and really anti-gay. Um, but that being said, there's nothing wrong with the actual story. It's just the author is a despicable bastard.
okay.
Yeah. I'll send you a video that Lindsay Ellis did back when she was still the nostalgia chick and before she went slightly off her rocker,
Mhm.
where she talked about it. It's a really good video.
Right.
Anyway, moving on.
That's it.
Oh, that was shorter than I thought it was. Oh, incidentally, point that I didn't get to that I want to go back to. Um, the orcs are impoverished because Sauron hates living things and he doesn't like when living things grow. And also, the orcs are orcs because Sauron and Melkor took a bunch of elves and tortured them until they were evil and broken beyond reckoning. So once again, fuck a you and your revisionist myth making.
Yeah, that actually be a pretty interesting story if someone were to write that, like just like a fan story or something.
I
Um,
mean, I could see it being done, but like as it stands, good God, how much do you have to miss anything resembling the point?
Well, no, I was talking about like how the orcs are like former elves tortured and stuff. Well, what I was thinking was, what if there was an elf that could kind of recognize one of the orcs as a friend or something, and tried like you on this journey to try to bring him back. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I would like to see at some point the orcs made more um made more integrated, but it would have to be a long time into the next age of Middle Earth, I think, before they're going, because Melkor literally designed them to be everything the elves weren't, and basically break the elves. Because, like I said, he got mad that Eru Ilúvatar wouldn't share with him the power to give things life, so he was like, I'm gonna take all of your living things and I'm gonna break them so badly you won't want to have them anymore.
Well, a part of me was thinking it would be kind of set a little bit before Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, and like the whole idea was is like this journey of this elf that's never mentioned or anything, just like a no name elf, like
Hmm.
and this kind of for and it ends on a dour note that the elf dies and the orc is still, well, a broken elf. I
Hmm.
realize that's pretty dour and all. I just think it it's
It would make an interesting story, at least.
yeah.
Much more interesting than the fucking cacophony we just sat through there.
Hmm. Okay, folks, that's kind of our end. So let's start with comic recommendations. I did actually read some comics this week because I had time.
Huzzah.
Yeah. So there's the Battle Cats, which is like it's an epic fantasy story with like kind of it's just an interesting story um, that has some mythological ties along with like kind of I think King Arthur like influence as well. Not
Mm,
more of like after he pulls the sword from the stone than
mm,
anything. And there's a lot of talk with like God, specifically a lion god, because like the
mm.
characters are feline creatures for the most
Yeah.
part. So yeah, it's pretty good. And also again, Doom Patrol that I've been reading. And since I brought it up, Invincible by Robert Kirkman from Image Comics.
Mm.
That's pretty much it for now.
Oh, I since I brought it up, best time is I need to bring this up again. There are Elric and Melbourne comics. They are some of the best comics I've ever read, and they are awesome. There are also pulp novels that the comics are based on, and they are also awesome. Read basically anything Elric. Anything Elric will be at least a good time for you.
Hmm. I need to look at those up.
Yes, yes, you do.
Right. Um. Yeah. So with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avidase, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom, and fuck off. Don't listen to people who try and convince you that orcs are the good guys.